Your house is worth whatever it's worth, right? Whoever sells it. Wrong. I'm Charlie. Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie, and thank you for coming.
Charlie Landing grew up in Sussex, is the founder of Best Agent and presenter of Moving Home with Charlie.
If you want to find one of these guys, look out for those compassionate professionals. All estate agents are not the same.
So Charlie, what would be your advice for people interested in buying new builds right now?
Don't overpay. Do buy, but don't overpay. That's why I say disregard the guff. Read into the numbers and look, and it's buried. The bad news is buried in the small print, okay?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Property Press Awards.
They may or may not be telling the truth, but you should form your own view. Get out and view, get out and view, get out and view. You cannot be in a position to make offers and have the offers accepted if you're not viewing. So be out there viewing. Pay attention to the back of the class. If you've not been watching my videos, I did one just a couple of days ago. Disregard the guff. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to an unscheduled live stream. And I'm afraid this is another one where I'm only doing it because there's so much stuff that's happened today that's burning a hole in my head. I have to get it out of my head or I won't be able to relax, won't be able to sleep, and I'll be exhausted tomorrow for our budget day tomorrow. Three things I'm going to be covering in this video, and I'm back in the place with rubbish internet. I'm doing a backup audio recording. So if there are any issues with this, I will publish the audio recording on podcast afterwards. I'm just going to keep going. Yes, Emma Metcalf, Gary Stevenson again, because that's the first thing. The reaction to last night's live stream with Lewis Shaw has shone a spotlight on the fact that there was one thing that I did say in the video, but a lot of people clearly missed, and I want to come on to that. And that is, but Charlie, it's nobody's fault. It's the system is broken, so there's nothing we can do except for fix the system by taxing the rich. The whole point of last night's video was to go, yeah, the system is broken, absolutely, and the system needs to be fixed, but it's not going to anytime soon. And even if taxing the rich was going to fix it, it's not going to help people trying to get into a home today. And for people who don't want to wait for the system to be fixed, which probably won't ever be fixed, as you'll see when I go on to other things I want to talk about today, the point of last night's video was to say what you can do if you don't think that waiting for the system to be fixed is a practical, realistic solution to getting a home. That's one of the things. The second thing is that today, the chief executive of the the charity Shelter, that doesn't provide any shelter, has announced that it's her last week in the job, and she's been in it for 7 years. And she tweeted about how much fun she's had. She's been paid almost £1 million. She has presided over the spending of almost £500 million in that time, and in that time, homelessness has gone up by nearly 50%. And she's patting herself on the back publicly for how much fun she's had taking that money off this charity, a lot of which is from the government, and spending £20 million a year throwing parties and fundraising. And the relevance here is about the broken system, and even the system that's funded by government and charities and donations that's supposed to help fix the housing crisis is actually making it worse, and I'm going to explain why. And the third thing that happened today was that Labour have trumpeted their announcement about we're going to be building more social and affordable homes for the most social and affordable homes built in a generation. 18,000. But that's only 1.2% of your target. That's just nothing. We'll come on to it. Yet more broken system with no chance of it being fixed. And no matter how much you tax the rich, Polly Neate would spend all the rich people's wealth tax, and just increase homelessness. Throwing parties for fundraising whilst homelessness goes up to record levels on the back of landlords selling up because of the government policies that, yes, you guessed it, Polly Neate advocated for. And my problem here, and how this loops back to Gary Stevenson's well-intentioned but misguided campaign, is that even when these ideologists who go, this sounds like a good idea, we're going to do it. And even when evidence shows us that doing it is not only not working, but actually making things worse, we're just going to keep doing it. And Gary Stevenson is making the same mistake. He's actually at risk of making the problem of poverty worse with his campaign. Anyway, that's the recap. That's the three things that I want to talk about. Okay. I'm going to try and channel my inner David Attenborough and be calm. I've got some things to share. I'm going to start by clarifying a lot of the misconceptions from last night's live stream. Sasha has joined in just to dig me in the ribs a bit and saying, if we tax Charlie just 2% of his wealth, we get everyone in the UK a cheque for £5,000. All right, good trolling. Thank you for cheering me up because I'm in a terribly bad mood. I agree with Gary Stevenson that there is a problem with where assets are ending up. I agree with a lot of what he says. I agree that it's not fair how hard it is to get into a home these days. I agree that poverty is getting worse. I agree that the economy is getting worse. I agree with him on most of what he says, except for that taxing the rich is going to make, whether it happens or not, I'm not even against it, right? I don't care that much either way, whether they tax the rich or don't. Tax the 1% or 2% of their wealth over 10 million quid. It won't make any fucking difference to anything. That's my point. I don't care whether you do it or not. It won't make a difference to the problem Gary's talking about, which is people being able to afford a home and be able to afford to buy a home. Okay? And last night, today, if you look in the comments of last night's live stream, lots of videos going, oh, Charlie, Lewis won that argument. You lost that argument. I had some people telling me that I won it and he lost it as well. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about debating how we improve affordability for people. I wasn't trying to beat Lewis and he wasn't trying to beat me. We're trying to discuss things so that people can actually make up their own minds about the way forward. And I had accusations of, oh, Charlie's so privileged, he doesn't even know it. I promise you that if you want to go and employ 16 ex-convicts and stand 7 days a week in an overall in a car park in Crawley washing cars, working with those guys, you will very, very quickly be disavowed of any unawareness of your privilege. I guarantee you. I had that severely beaten out of me in my early 20s, I can assure you. And all of that is distracting for the fact. I'm now going to stick to some facts on this, right? It is a fact that the housing market in the UK is in crisis, is dysfunctional, and is broken. Nobody that I know disputes that fact. And with Gary Stevenson, I'm in agreement on that fact. Okay? We're all in agreement. The housing market's fucked. Housing crisis is in full blown. And it is a systemic crisis. And we could debate how we got here. There are various things that contribute to it. But I think there's a lot of agreement on how we got there. Money debasement, buy-to-let mortgages, low interest rates, help to buy schemes, all of those things, right? But given that we do all agree that it is a fact that the housing market is fucked, you have a choice. Your choice is, it's so fucked, I will never be able to earn enough money, so I'm giving up on home ownership. That's not a fact. That's a choice that some people make. They choose to give up trying to own a home. Don't tell me it's not a choice. It is a choice, right? It is a choice to make that. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that choice. We're all free to make our own choices, right? And then there are other people who look at that fact about how fucked the housing market is and go, yep, the system's fucked, the housing market's fucked, That's a fact. But I'm choosing to find a way around that. That's also a choice. Okay? I'm not telling anybody to make the choice one way or the other. I'm simply making the observation that it is a fact that people make a choice. And the evidence that that's a fact is that there are lots of people who, without, yes, people who get deposits gifted from family have it much easier, absolutely. But there are still hundreds of thousands of people who save up a deposit by working for it and buying a home. Do they have to go to greater lengths to achieve that? Yes, and that's their choice. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. They made the choice to do whatever's necessary to save up enough to buy a home. That's a fact. You can't argue with that. Nobody can argue with that. Okay? My point last night, and I have never, in fact, I would advise lots of people against setting up a business. Now, setting up a business and working for yourself, in my mind, are two separate things. Right? A business is something you want to build and you want to grow, you want to hire staff, etc. Working for yourself is choosing to keep the value of your efforts and not share them with an employer. That's another choice. And then there are other people who go into employment and do very, very well out of that employment and are able to buy a home, a very comfortable home, have a great life. These are all the options, right? The debate last night was about whether or not Gary Stevenson's rhetoric, right, not even arguing with what he says, but the rhetoric is demoralizing and disincentivizing. That was what's up for debate, and that is open to interpretation. And there are no facts. It's opinion, right? Does the underlying message of Gary Stevenson's "it's not your fault you can't afford a home, so let's tax the rich," does that contain a demotivating message or a motivating message? That is opinion. That's up for debate. That's what I wanted to debate last night. I'm not telling anyone that they should or shouldn't do anything. I'm saying that you have choices. That's a fact. You have choices when faced with the reality of your prospects becoming a homeowner. You have choices. One of the choices is to go, I'm never going to be able to own a home what I afford. I'm going to give up. I'm just going to live my life and rent for the rest of my life. That's a choice. You have a choice to go, oh, I'm going to attempt self-employment so that I can keep all of or more of the work the money I earn from my work. That's a choice. It may or may not work out. For lots of people it does. For lots of people it doesn't. It's a choice. And choosing not to do that is also a choice. And then there are people who decide, I want to start a business and build it and sell my business and use the proceeds of selling my business to buy a home or to retire with and be my pension. These are just choices. There's no dispute about that. There's no debate about that. These are choices that we all have. Some people may tell themselves that those options aren't open to you. I would respectfully disagree with anybody in that position, right? You do have a choice. You may decide not to make that choice and decide not to choose. You may choose to stay as you are. That's fine. Am I saying it's not the fault of the system? No, it is the fault of the system. It is 100% the fault of the system that housing is pretty much the most unaffordable it's ever been. It's 100% the fault of the system that there's a shortage of social housing. It's 100% the fault of the system that there is so much homelessness. And all of these things are things that I am attempting to improve and to change and to bring about change to. That's what I'm working on with Best Agent. That's what I've committed my career to doing. And if you disagree with me, cool, that's fine. If you're saying to me, no, Charlie, we don't have a choice. We do not have a choice. We must just accept our lot and accept that we're never going to be homeowners and just be angry with other people for it. I respect that, right? We're all free to cope however we choose to cope, okay? But I utterly reject the notion that you need privilege to become self-employed or start a business. Privilege massively improves your chances and provides a safety net. But I personally know of lots of people with no privilege, and no safety net, who decided to go self-employed and did very well. And all they had was determination. That's all they had. They tried, failed, got back up, tried again, failed. Because you know what? When you fail, the sun still rises the next day. And you'll be amazed how much people want to help you out when you fail. You get some idiots who point and laugh and go, oh, it failed, you didn't work. Those are the people who haven't got the courage to try for themselves. But other people who've been through failure themselves will rush around and help pick you up and go, don't worry, we've all been there. Help you back on your feet. And it's amazing how much that happens. So that's clearing up any confusion about last night, right? The system, it is definitely the system that's why the housing market, it makes housing so unaffordable. And it should not be that way. And it is unfair on the younger generations. No dispute about any of that. And I agree with Gary on the causes for that. I don't care whether they tax the rich or not. I literally couldn't give a shit whether they decide to tax the rich or not. I don't care about that. But it won't make houses more affordable for you. And if you think it will, you're deluded. And I think the people who go, yeah, tax the rich, are the people who've gone, because I'm never going to be able to afford a home anyway, so taxing the rich will make me feel better. Fine, tax the rich. See if it makes a difference to your life. It might feel better for a minute or two, and then your schadenfreude will float away, and you'll be back to square one. Nothing will have changed. That's just my opinion. Right. Next point. The system and how fucked it is. So today, I'm going to share this with you on the screen, right? Today, oh, this is going to make me cross. I've done videos about shelter before. Today, Polly Neate, there she is. That's the photo she posted, who is the chief executive of the homelessness, self-appointed homelessness charity Shelter, posted on X saying, now in my final week at Shelter, looking forward to my last ELT meeting. This is the official photo that was taken on my first day, the start of 7.5 years in my actual dream job. I was amazed to be standing there. I thought, this is going to be fantastic. Boy, have I had fun. I don't think fun is supposed to come into a job where you are in charge of a £70 million a year budget with the responsibility of reducing homelessness, right? But this is the attitude that she took. Now, by the way, this is not a personal, I don't know, Polly, I'm sure she's a wonderful human being and she means well, all those kind of things. This is not a personal, this is a professional criticism. And I'm using it to highlight the example of so much that's wrong with the whole systemic and government approach to housing in this country. Bear with me, because this gets shocking. So that's her announcement today. Honestly, I can't wait for her to go and for someone else to take over, because Shelter are arguably one of the biggest causes of the housing crisis getting worse now. And I'll explain that, I'll back that up, right? So I did a quick bit of research and I found out that in the 7.5 years, the 7 years that she's been at the helm, the total budget is £460 million. Just gonna let that sink in, right? £460 million is the Shelter budget for the last 7 years, for the time that Polly has been in position. And Polly earned, according to this, £992,000 roughly, not including pension contributions. So basically £1 million, right? So she got paid £1 million to be in charge of a £70 million a year budget to fix homelessness. And on the day she started, this was the press release, right? So this is the Shelter website. Polly Neate announced as new CEO of homelessness charity Shelter. And one of the things that she says is, the sad truth, homelessness is a growing problem in this country. Almost 250,000 people are homeless in the UK right now. So almost 250,000 people homeless when she started. That's why I'm so thrilled to be joining Shelter at such an important time to work with its world-class staff, blah, 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 to make its mission of ending homelessness a reality. So that's her quote. Ending homelessness is Shelter's and her mission. How did she do? Well, in December, Shelter themselves published this. So they've gone from almost 250,000 homeless when she started. And what do they have to show for her performance of ending homelessness, their mission? It's gone up to 354,000 people, at least. But it's okay because she's had fun. Well, jolly good for you, Polly. I'm glad you had fun failing those 100,000 people. I'm glad you had fun. I'm glad you earned £1 million for it. Good for you. Fair's fair. You were offered the money. You took the money. What I find unbelievable and distasteful is that you have refused to accept or even acknowledge the failure of Shelter to help the homelessness problem. And why is that? Well, I think we can see why. One of the things that Shelter did was become a political lobbying organization. And they started in 2018 when Polly started lobbying government for the Renters Reform Bill originally and to start changing the law on landlords. And Polly has clapped her hands and said great about this. She was warned, Shelter was warned by multiple organizations back in 2018 that this will result in rents going up and homelessness going up. They literally put their fingers in their ears and ignored it. They didn't even acknowledge the concern of major industry organizations saying that policy has a high risk of backfiring. And this is their latest thing right now. This is live, right? This is really recent, right? They are now doubling down on this. The Renters' Rights Bill is about to turn into law, and they want various changes. One of them is limiting requests for guarantors. Now, what that does is it further increases the risk to landlords and will further increase the number of landlords selling up. Well, here's the smoking gun. This is the government's own website for official homelessness statistics in England. And on that website page, which I have linked to below, so you can go and check it out for yourself, the most common recorded reasons households owed a homelessness prevention duty were related to landlords wishing to sell the property. The most common cause of new homelessness is landlords wishing to sell the property. So the government's own data shows that landlords selling up is driving homelessness up. They won't acknowledge it. It's so difficult for me to get my head around this. They're increasing the need and the demand for social housing that we already don't have enough of, and still pressing ahead with the Renters' Rights Bill legislation, even though we now have smoking gun evidence that anti-landlord policies result in more homelessness and higher rents. There cannot be any doubt about this. This is fact. And yet, no one in government will even acknowledge it. They all wring their hands about homelessness and the housing crisis, and then ignore the cold hard evidence of their failure with government policy, the Tories first and now Labour, that's making it worse. Which is why there's so much debate about whether or not actually this is intentional. Is it intentional or is it incompetence? Well, I don't know. If it is intentional then I don't think that the Labour government are in on it, because they're frankly not bright enough, right? They're just useful idiots carrying out policies that are being given to them by someone else, and aren't even looking at the data and won't even allow themselves to be properly challenged. I'm dedicating my career, and by the way, I've started a business. I've invested every last penny to my name in this business. I'm risking everything. I'm hoping it's going to work. I'm hoping we're going to create jobs and help more people get into homes and help reduce homelessness. And if it does work, I stand to make a lot of money. I'm okay with that. Making a lot of money because you've helped people, fine by me. Same as rock stars, right? You write great songs, lots of people buy them. No one ever begrudged musicians making money from their music. No different, right? I don't want to make money unless it's by helping people. The government, for whatever reason, just doesn't care about anything but their own careers and what it looks like and sounds like, which brings me on to the last part of this. Just having a quick look at the comments. There's too many to read there. So the last part is that today, the government announced, I was going to share the page. Chancellor of the Exchequer Rachel Reeves has pledged £2 billion of funding for social and affordable homes in a move that could appease members of a Labour Party who are unhappy about sweeping cuts other areas. So they've made this announcement to appease unhappy, not because, I mean, that literally to me spells it out why they've done it. It's to appease the unhappy members before tomorrow's budget speech. And they post this on X. The Labour Party, as part of Labour's plan for change, I wish that should just be called Labour's change of plan. Hard-working families will get safe, secure homes. That's right, because new build houses are really safe, aren't they? Through $2 billion. Ooh, that sounds like a lot of money. $2 billion investment to deliver up to 18,000 new social and affordable homes. Well, unless I've got my maths wrong, which I do sometimes, these two jokers have announced that they're going to build 1.2% of their house building target. 1.2%. It's nothing. It doesn't touch the sides. And they're not saying when they're going to deliver it. And the careful wording there of social and affordable homes means that they won't even all be social homes. And the definition of affordable doesn't actually make them affordable to anybody. This is political spin at its absolute worst. It's headline-grabbing soundbite to look and sound good, because most people won't actually scrutinize those numbers and go, how many is that? Up to 18,000 social and affordable homes. How many of those will be social, we don't know. And to put it in context, we have 350,000 people homeless in temporary accommodation who need social homes and don't have them. We have 150,000 households in temporary accommodation. So what they're announcing isn't even, it's 12%. It's 12% of the people who are currently in temporary accommodation using up council money for temporary accommodation rather than being in social homes. The fastest solution, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the fastest solution to the housing crisis is a mass social and council house building program by the government, building its own social housing stock that it owns, to reduce the £1.7 billion temporary accommodation bill, to reduce the impact on people's lives, on those 150,000 people in temporary accommodation unable to get on with their lives, and to meet its own obligations. Because why does that benefit the rest of us? Because if the government no longer needs to use private rented homes to meet social housing obligations, guess what will happen to rents in the private sector? Anyone? Bueller? They'll come down. And not only that, a massive social house building, and I'm talking about building high quality, long lasting, durable blocks of apartments and flats big enough to house families in the areas that they're needed. So brownfield, we don't need to concrete over the countryside to do this. Brownfield sites, there are more than enough of them to accommodate this amount of social house building, right? To prioritize that. Let the private sector do what it wants. This other lie about mandating house building targets. You can't mandate the private sector to do anything. Every time they say compulsory or mandatory house building targets, they are lying when they say that. It is a known lie. The Black Belt barrister did a video about this, about how they can't actually mandate house building targets. Until the government, and it could create a lot of employment by doing it, and it's talking about, what else did it announce? It announced the apprenticeship schemes for training up builders. But they're going to go into the private sector. You couldn't make it up. The taxpayer is going to be paying for apprentice schemes to train builders up to go and work in the private sector. So the house builders can keep on making their profits. Leave the private housing sector, private house building and private renter sector, leave them alone. Get away from them. As a government, meet your own obligations yourselves. Don't use the private rented sector. Nothing will solve the housing crisis faster than that. And everything that's been announced today is such a tiny gesture to brush us off and to make headlines. And it's shocking. Right, I see a lot of you commenting about Gary Stevenson and what kind of character he is. I don't care whether he was or wasn't a successful trader. I don't care how he made his money. I don't care. It doesn't matter. That's all just gossip, right? Because my basis is, it doesn't matter who says something. It only matters whether it's true or not, right? It doesn't matter who says it. Is it true? Will taxing the rich end poverty? I don't think so. Tax them anyway if you want, but I don't think so. I think it makes poverty worse. That's a debate, but that's not the debate I want to have about this. My debate about Gary Stevenson is his rhetoric, ignoring its credibility, ignoring his motives, putting to one side whether he's a grifter or not, whether he's in big book sales. I actually happen to believe that Gary does want to help and does want to reduce poverty. In the same way, I think Polly Neate at Shelter probably wanted to reduce homelessness. But she hasn't. She's presided over it going up. That reminds me, I had an employee of Shelter actually send me in a private message today after I posted about them saying that I was right. And here's what she said. I had a nervous breakdown working at Shelter, and so did a number of other staff. That's why I left eventually. I was working on the legal side of things after moving from the helpline. Everyone was on a really good salary, but the work pressure and the number of cases I had to deal with, it was really heavy. I always felt like we weren't really changing things on the ground, just advising councils on housing law. I would get shouted at a lot on the helpline. The public didn't want to hear about the law. They wanted accommodation. And so many of them misunderstood what Shelter was able to do for them. Yes, because you called it Shelter, Polly. She didn't call it Shelter, but the charity was called Shelter. Yes, you are right about big fat cat salaries, pensions, and fundraisers. It used to sicken me, quite honestly. What they need are more hubs where people can go and actually see someone, but they won't invest in that. They also need more on-the-ground support workers working with families, visiting them in their homes, helping with applications, and attending and supporting them at appointments. Real, valuable work, not the call centre approach that doesn't help anyone with bailiffs at the door. So that's from the horse's mouth from an ex-shelter employee. Yeah, so listen, maybe Gary's grifting, maybe he's selling books, it doesn't matter. I only care about whether or not his rhetoric is going to encourage more people to get into a home or actually have the unintended effect of less people doing it. And when it comes to the question, I did some research earlier, when it comes to the question of why house prices have gone up, is it because of the rich? I did some research using AI to find out in the last 30 years, retail investor buy-to-let landlord, so people just buying one buy-to-let investment using buy-to-let mortgages, specifically with mortgages, are estimated to have been around between 4 and 5 million retail investor buy-to-let mortgages in the last 30 years. That is a substantial portion of the UK's housing stock. Those people weren't rich, right? And that demand was from easy, cheap buy-to-let money that the last Labour government, I believe I'm right in saying, changed the law to allow easier buy-to-let lending. It could have been the Tories, I can't remember, right? But I think it was in the 90s. I think it was Labour that did it. And out of interest, I also thought, right, let's look up about cash investors. So people buying residential properties with cash to not live in them. Because someone, you could argue that's the rich buying up property, but it was less than half that amount. So twice as many people didn't have the cash to buy, so they're not rich and they use buy-to-let mortgages to buy property compared to people who bought with cash. And so one of the biggest drivers, if you're looking at it, is it the rich who've driven up house prices, or is it cheap lending, easy lending? It's lending. It's lending. The data's there to prove that, right? And that's why taxing the rich isn't going to solve that problem either. Housing Stig has repeatedly said that banks need to start gradually reducing lending multiples. And that's the only way to stop excessive house price growth, pushing homes further out of reach. Because let's just imagine for a second that Gary does tax the rich, right? He gets up there and he's down on the steps and he's campaigning and he's being really clever and getting lots of publicity. And everyone's cheering, yeah, tax the rich, tax the rich. And let's just say that they do. That's not going to make houses cheaper for anyone. No one is going to be able to buy a house because of Gary or taxing the rich that couldn't buy one before. Right? So, again, I agree with Gary on most of what he says. I don't care. I'm indifferent about whether you tax the rich or not. But it won't solve the poverty issue because the money will go to the government and the government wastes money. As we've just seen, the government gives shelter 10% of its budget, right? £7.5 million a year. So that's what the government pours money into things like shelter, okay, which by their own results aren't working. £82 million they spent in their last financial year. Right. Okay, let's have a bit of a look. Do we have any questions? Why is a wealth tax good? If you can explain to me why a wealth tax is good and what problems it solves, right? So low wages is a problem. High house prices is a problem. Wealth tax just makes some people feel better. It fixes nothing. And this is the other thing about, there aren't enough houses. Yeah, there are. There are officially 1.5 million long-term vacant homes. Okay? That could easily be brought back into circulation with tax levers. Now, if Gary Stevenson went, tax empty homes, I would be standing beside him, cheering with him. Tax empty homes, tax empty homes. And if there are people going, but hang on a second, I want to own my property and keep it empty for my own personal reasons. That's fine. But you're going to have to pay tax on it because there is a housing crisis and that's a luxury. And so we're going to tax luxuries because keeping a property empty is a luxury, right? We're going to tax luxuries to help improve availability of homes. I would hold Gary's hand up and cheer with him if he was saying tax empty homes, tax empty homes. There are 1.5 million of those. No one ever talks about it. And these aren't second homes, by the way. There are councils that are taxing second homes and holiday homes. That's going to bring them back to the market. That is happening. But this is in addition to that. And so 1.5 million, that's Labour's entire house building target. Now, the house building target is another red herring, right? The house building target is only in the interests of the house builders, provided people are getting the mortgages to buy them, which is why they're lobbying the government to make mortgages easier and to reduce lending criteria and to increase multiples and to lend more, lend more, lend more. More lending makes it worse. Gary should be going, less lending, less lending, less lending, tax empty homes. I promise you, I would go and cheer with him if he did that. Right, guys, that was an unscheduled rant. I'm exhausted. I've had a long day, got a long one tomorrow as well. Stephen Simmons says, I need a 4-hour live stream reaction to Sasha's budget. Compelling watch. I watched Sasha Yanchin's emergency UK budget today. It's a great watch. It's an hour and a half long, but there's some real... Sasha, if you're still watching this and if you've given up trolling me, are you still there? Sasha, if you're still there, tell me, say hi. Sasha's emergency budget is genius. It's genuinely genius. His proposed replacement for enterprise zones, which he calls launch pads, the U launch pads and the M launch pads, is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant idea. He does lots of controversial things about inheritance tax and VAT and corporation tax. And I mean, all of them promote business. And it's very, very clever. So if you haven't watched it, go and watch Sasha Yanchin's UK emergency budget video. What do you think is... Yeah, I'm all for reducing income tax. We need more better paying jobs. That is what we need. And that only comes from the private sector creating jobs. Alethea says, I would love to see you and Gary get together on a live and talk about it. Charlie, how about it? I would welcome that opportunity. Gary's a much bigger celebrity than me. He's on telly all the time. He's in the papers all the time. So I'm just little old me. And he has messaged me a couple of times on X. I did put an invite out to him, but I know he's so busy at the moment. But I would welcome the chance to discuss it with Gary. I really would. I'd welcome it. Emma Metcalf asking the same thing. Are you inviting? Yeah, I have an open invite to Gary to come on here if he'd like to. Yeah, Ren Malott, why don't you get Gary on your platform? Guys, listen, all of you, message him. Tag him on X, Instagram, wherever you follow him, on YouTube. Say to him, tell him you'd love to hear him talking to me about it. Because I share his objective. I just don't share his strategy. And, that debate would be useful. A debate like that would be fantastic. I might learn stuff. He might learn stuff. and people watching the debate might learn stuff that helps everyone avoid poverty and get into a home. Do we have any other questions? Just looking about this. My collection's bad. Guys, I'm going to wrap. I'm going to call it that. Thanks for watching. And remember, if you want to find me, you can find me on my website, mhwc.co.uk/mortgage or whatever else. There's conveyancing, mortgage, everything else. But mhwc.co.uk, or below there's a link to my link tree where you can book one-to-one calls with me if you're helping with moving. If you want to talk about this, private sessions with me, or join the Private Movers Q&A Club. Tomorrow is the budget, isn't it? I've got a real impending sense of dread about the budget because, by the way, no one's talking about it, but the Bank of England is bailing out pension funds at the rate of £60 billion a week, and no one's talking about that. And guess what? UK 10-year gilt yields are at 4.8. They reached, I believe, 4.8% today, which is higher than they reached when the Liz Truss budget happened. And we haven't even had Rachel Reeves's budget tomorrow. It feels like, I posted on X today, I said this. It feels like World War III was a psyop and we lost. On that bombshell, guys, have a great night. I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.